Hey guys, good morning and welcome to today's session. This is Primus Veku and this is Primus Learning. We are continuing with our tutorial series, our AWS tutorial series, and today we'll be looking at the service, the EC2 instances in AWS. Last three videos, we've been talking about S3 and how S3 is really an object store in AWS and how you could leverage S3 to do different things. In this video, we'll focus on EC2 instances. We'll define what EC2 instances are. We will get into the details of how we can create an EC2 instance and what the various features are. And also, we will log into the EC2 instances, test them out, and see how they're working. So to define an EC2 instance, Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud is the full name, right? Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud, EC2. You see Amazon, which and then Elastic. Elastic is the E. C is the compute clouds, compute cloud. Those are two C's. That's where the name comes from, Amazon EC2. So this service provides on-demand scalable computing capacity in the Amazon Web Services cloud, which means it gives you the opportunity to create servers, to create on-demand servers, to create servers as you need them with the capacity that you so desire. I'll show you how you can increase your storage capacity in the instances depending on the instance types that you choose and also the storage capacity that you want. Using Amazon EC2 reduces hardware costs so you can develop and deploy applications faster. That's the beauty of EC2 instances, right? You can focus more on your work rather than on a server. Imagine you had to buy a server from the US, from China, from France to get to you before you are able to install your applications and run them. You discover that with this, you can literally create an instance in 2 minutes, in 3 minutes, in 1 minute, and you're ready to go to start testing your application. You can use Amazon EC2 to launch as many or as few virtual servers as you need. You can use it to configure security and networking and manage storage as well. You can add capacity to scale up, so you can scale up and scale down as your workload increases, right? You can use it to launch websites and do a lot of things, right? You could use it with auto scaling such that when your traffic is increasing, the number of instances increase. When your traffic is reducing, the number of instances would also reduce. This is really good when it comes to EC2 instances. All right, so the architecture of an EC2 instance, this is how it looks, right? The architecture of an EC2 instance looks this way. You would have the AWS cloud, then you'll be deploying your instances in a particular region, and you'll be deploying them inside an availability zone. We discussed about regions and availability zones, and availability zones are just those areas within the AWS space where you can create your resources. And so we'll create a virtual private cloud, which we call the VPCs. Remember, we saw in our initial videos how to create VPCs. Today, we'll also create a VPC and just tuck inside the instances in a public subnet. We'll create instances in public subnets and in private subnets. And we'll do this using the console and also using Terraform. All right, so you see, this would have to be inside a virtual private cloud, and that virtual private cloud would have internet gateway connected to it. So you see internet gateway right here, and we'll have a public subnet created, and inside that public subnet we'll have an instance. The instance will be tucked into a security group, which means the traffic that we want is exactly the traffic that will be opening up. And then we'll have an EBS volume attached to it. You see this EBS volume is out there, it's external, but it can be attached to the instance so that you have more storage here. This right here is storage that is permanent, right? And you can attach it to your instance to have it stay on it. So you see the EC2 instance is within an availability zone in the region. The instance is secured with a security group, which is a security group is virtually a virtual firewall that controls incoming traffic and outgoing traffic. And then you have this private key here, right? So you'll be creating a private key which is stored on your local computer, and a public key which is stored inside the instance that you are creating. And both keys are specified as a key pair to prove that the user is actually the one who has that access, who wants to access that instance. So you store one key in your local machine, which is called a private key, and the other key, which is the public key, will be stored inside the instance. And that's why they're calling it key pair, right? So that when you pair the keys and you want to access that instance, you have to pair the keys and make sure that they match. If they don't match, you are not the good identity. You don't have the right identity. But if they match, then you can go ahead and add and access that instance. In this scenario, the instance is backed by an Amazon EBS volume. The VPC communicates with the internet using an internet gateway in this architecture. This is the type of architecture we'll be creating, right? So if we go to next, we'll see basically the whole diagram, how this will look. So we'll have a VPC that we create, right? We'll have a VPC with two subnets, a public subnet and a private subnet. You see the public subnet here and the private subnet. The public subnet will be within a certain range that will give us 256 IP addresses. The private one will be in the same range, in a different range, which will give us also 256 IP addresses. This right here will be tucked inside a VPC, and then we'll have a route table in front of the public subnet and a route table in front of the private subnet. We will also have an internet gateway that connects to the public subnet so that we can have internet access. We will deploy a website on here, right? We'll deploy a website here, and we'll be able to access that website out of AWS through a web browser, right? You see the internet here. And also we'll be able to SSH into this instance because it will have a public access through that public IP address that will be enabled. This will not have that type of access to it because maybe this instance has some private data, and that's why we're putting it inside a private subnet, right? But it will have the ability to get updates from the internet through the NAT gateway that will be sitting in front of it. So this instance will be able to have updates from the internet and so on. The NAT gateway will be sitting inside the public subnet, but it will be connected to this route table right here so that it has access to, this instance can get access from the internet. So that's basically how this demo would look. We'll do this on the console manually, and we'll do it through Terraform. I showed you that in our videos, we will do everything both ways. And the recommended way, of course, is through Terraform. But guys, let's go ahead and start. So we're starting off with this first part, right? By creating a VPC. All of this needs to sit inside a VPC. This VPC, you see the ranges that will give. So take note of the ranges. So what we want to do, therefore, is create a VPC that has this same name, but we'll add a suffix on it, which is a version 2 or something. So we want to create only a VPC, and we'll give it the name this 2. So we'll put a 2 in front here. All right, so that looks good. And we need to give it a CIDR range, right? And the CIDR range we'll give for this will be 10.0.0.0/16. This is the CIDR range we want to give for this one. 10.0.0.0/16. All right, we'll use the default tenancy, and the rest should be fine. All right, let's create our VPC. So this is the first resource we've created, right? The VPC, and this is the name of the VPC. This is the first resource we've created. You see, we have other things that we'll need to create. We need to create subnets, we need to create route tables, we need to create internet gateways and a NAT gateway. So the second thing I want to create is the internet gateway, because on this diagram, you see how the internet gateway is. We have this, and then we have the internet gateway. That's the next thing I want to create. On this one, it's more visual, right? You have this, and you have the internet gateway directly sitting on top of it, and that's why I want to create that second and attach it to that instance. So go ahead and click here and give it a name And here we'll put Internet Gateway 2. So this is the second thing we want to create. We'll just go ahead and create. Now we've created the internet gateway, but it is not connected to this right here. You see, we just created it, but it's not connected. We have to connect it to this VPC. Just as you're seeing on this other diagram, it has to be inside this VPC. So we want to connect it into that VPC. So you see, that's why we're saying attached to a VPC. We created a new VPC, so that VPC that has no internet gateway attached will come up. And so we'll select it and simply hit attach. And now our VPC currently has internet gateway. It doesn't mean that it will automatically be used in any subnet that you create. No, that's not what it means. It simply means that that VPC has internet gateway and it can be attached or unattached to a particular route table. Now let's go ahead and create our subnets. We want to create two subnets, one public and one private. Those are two subnets that we want to create. We have some existing, but we'll just rename these ones correctly. So we want to create a subnet, and where are we creating the subnet? The subnet has to be inside the new VPC, which we appended a 2 in front of. So we're creating it here. So if you look at this diagram, you see this one has just one subnet, so this subnet has to be inside this VPC, and this subnet has to be inside this VPC. So there are two subnets that we're creating. All right, and the subnet has to fall within this range, right? Somewhere in between that range. So we'll do this and just say we'll start this one and give dash public, because we'll start with the public subnet. Public subnet. So we'll do that and just copy, because we'll use it down there again. And the range we want to have here, so you maintain this. We want to put this in availability zone A. Put this in one as availability zone. We want to have our resources in one place, right? So put it inside the US East 1A availability zone, and it automatically picks up the CIDR range for the VPC that we're creating this inside. And then here we have to define our IPv4 subnet CIDR block, and we'll give this one to be 10.0.1.0/24. What happens here is it will give us 256 IP addresses, and all instances that we'll be creating inside this public subnet. Remember, we named it public subnet. All instances that will be created inside this public subnet, note this very well, will have this, a 10.0.1 in front, a 10.0.1 dot something, right, as the IP address. So note all the public instances that we'll create, all their private IPs would fall within this range right here. So I want you to note that, and that's the IP address our website would display. All right, so we'll see that that's our first subnet. Let's define our second subnet. Remember, we said we want to create two subnets, one is public and one private. So name this one private instead of public. You see, we'll name this one private. And let's give it a name up here. Let's add 2 here instead of 1. Just that, we'll add 2, and down here we'll affix a 2 in front of everything. Down here we add a 2 as well. And then for the subnet, we want to put this in subnet A. For the availability zone, we want to put it inside the US East 1A availability zone. And for the IP range, or the IP CIDR block, we want to put 10.0.2.0/24. And note that it will also give us 256 IP addresses, just as we said here, right? You see, this one will give us 256 IP addresses. This one will give us 256 IP addresses. And so these instances that we'll be creating inside will have the IP range of 10.0.1, while this one will have 10.0.2. And that is exactly what we're representing here with this 2, right? For all those that will be in the private subnet. All right, this looks good for us. Let's go ahead and create these 2 subnets. So you see, we've created two subnets, Primus Learning Series private subnet and Primus Learning Series public subnet 2. Now we want to create route tables, and inside those route tables, we'll see that they have to be associated with the subnets. Remember, very important. Note this: we first of all created a VPC, then we created a route table, the internet gateway, and attached that internet gateway to the VPC. Now we want to go and create, and we then created subnets, two subnets. We want to then go and create two route tables. One will be public and the other will be private. So let's go to route tables and hit on, let me just X this out and hit on create route tables. So this route table, we'll name it this, we'll name it public route table 2. So do that and copy that name because we'll create two. This one is public. We'll create the next one will be private. And we want to target inside the Primus Learning Series VPC2 VPC. All right. So we've selected that VPC and we've created a route table. Let's create our second route table. There's work that still needs to be done with these route tables, but let's go ahead and create the second route table. So we'll go back to route tables and hit on create and create a second route table. This one will be private. Instead of public, we'll put private here. Private route table 2. And then we'll select the same VPC again. You see VPC 2 because it's appended with a 2 in front there. And we will create the second route table. And we've created a second route table. Now our route tables, let's filter out our route tables by RT2 because it has that prefix in front of it, right? And you discover that we have just two that are with RT. One is public and one is private. All right, now we want to use this public one, want to do some work with this public one. Notice what we're doing. The first thing is want to associate this subnet, want to edit the subnet association so that it explicitly tells us or links us up to, you see this is the route table, so that this public route table links us up to the public subnet. That's what we want to do, which is this section here. You see that this public subnet links us up to this private, to this route table. So we want to associate those two. So you click on subnet association and edit subnet association. Now you have to be careful here. You want to select the public subnet because this is the public route table. So you want to associate it with the public subnet. This is very important. So you select the public subnet and associate, and then you go to your second route table. Now want to go to our second route table, which is the private route table. So you click on the private route table and go to subnet association. So you see, we will do two things with the route tables. But the first is we are editing the subnet association. So for the subnet association of the private route table, we want to select the private subnet right here, which is this one, Primus Learning Series private subnet 2. That's what we want to select and associate. So we've done the first part of work with the subnets. We have two subnets that we created. We've done the first part of work, which is associating them to the subnets. We are associating the route tables to the subnet so that they match with the particular subnets that we want them to have. See in this diagram, this route table is associated with this subnet, with this public subnet. This route table is associated with this private subnet. That is what we've done. But now there's something more. We want then to go to our routes. There's a difference between the route and that association that we just did. We want to go to our route. On the route tables, the route is different from the route table. The route table is the entity itself, while the route is the road that you're creating, right? So want to go there and attach the internet gateway to this one. Want to attach the internet gateway to the public route table. So, and here we'll need to attach the NAT gateway to the private route table, but we haven't created the NAT gateway yet. We'll do that later. It's not really necessary for this tutorial, but I will just show you how to create that. All right, so let's go ahead and create our route. Let's go back to the route tables. You see, let's go to the public route table, which is this one up, Primus Learning Series public route table, and click on it. And under routes, you see, this is the route. You edit the route. And what we want to do is add a route. We want to add a route. That route should, the destination should be the internet. When you put 0.0.0.0/0, that implies the internet. And what do we want to do? We want to select an internet gateway. All right. Remember, we created an internet gateway initially. So this is how we are connecting internet to the private subnet so that through the route table. And so we select the route table that we created, right? You see, it is a route table that we created, and then you save changes. Now, this instance, any instance that you create inside this subnet that has this association, that is associated to this route table will have internet activity, internet access, and people can connect to it. That's why you see it here. It has internet gateway. The private one doesn't have. So if we go back to route tables, the private one doesn't have that route. If you look at this private one, it has just the local route to the VPC. You see, it has internet only in the VPC. So to enable this one to get internet access from the internet, we are not granting it access so that people will access it from the internet. What we want to do is this instance going to the internet maybe and downloading things and doing stuff. So this internet, this is the route table will allow traffic to go and fetch things from the internet, right? To do that, you have to create a NAT gateway, what is called a NAT gateway. You see NAT gateways down here. So you go there and create what is called a NAT gateway. And you just call this NAT gateway. NAT, NAT gateway, like that. It's private, actually. It's not, just say private, but doesn't really matter. And then you want to tuck it inside this NAT gateway has to be inside the public subnet because it has to have internet. So you're putting it inside the public public subnet, right? So you put it in there and you have to allocate an IP address for it. This is very important to allocate an elastic IP address on it so that it is able to have that internet connectivity, though it is not directly, it's not direct to the internet. It will pass through the route table. All right, so let's create this NAT. And now if you go back to your route tables and go then to this private subnet, to this private route table, sorry, you are able then to go to this and edit and add a route. This route should be to the destination is the internet, and instead of the internet gateway, you want to choose the NAT gateway, the NAT gateway. And now you've created a NAT gateway. You select it and you save. All right. Now, any instance, you see it has a route to the internet. Any instances that are created inside the subnet that has this route table will be able to download artifacts, to download things from the internet, patches and so on, and it will be able to go and access the internet. But nobody from the internet will be able to directly access this instance. So we have completed this setup right here, the initial setup in terms of the VPC. Now let's go ahead and create some VPCs inside this subnet. The VPC that we'll create will have some data inside, right? Oh, sorry, we'll have some user data. The EC2 instance that we'll create, not the VPC, the EC2 instance that we'll create will have some user data, and this one in the public subnet will be accessible in the internet, while this one will not be accessible. So let's go to the console and go to EC2, search for EC2, go in there and create an instance. So we want to create an EC2 instance. Currently, there are no running instances. We want to go and create an instance. You click there, go to create or launch instances, and we want to give it a name and call it public instance. Let's just call it public EC2. 2. EC2. Yep, let's just call it public EC2. The other one will call it private EC2 so that it's distinguishable. Okay, so down here, I want to use an Ubuntu image and use this free tier. And you see, these are the options, guys. This is how the EC2 instance looks. The Amazon EC2 allows you to create virtual machines or instances that run on the AWS cloud. These are the EC2 instances that we're creating. This is how the EC2 instance console looks. And you see, if you go to the left here, since we are dealing with the EC2 instance, there are a couple of things that are related to the instance that we need to look at. So you have the global view, you have the console to code view, and then the instances. These are the instances that are running in your account. These are the instance types that are created in your account or that are existing. Launch templates, you can create launch templates and use them to create instances. I will show you when we are dealing with the load, when we're dealing with auto scaling. You can also request different types of EC2 instances, spot requests, you can request spot instances, and so on. There are different cost saving plans that you could use to get instances. You could also reserve instances in what AWS calls reserved instances. And there are other things here like AMIs. An AMI, an Amazon machine image, is an image of the application, right? You can see here an Amazon machine image is a template that contains the software configuration. So the software configuration here includes the operating system, the application server, and applications required to launch your instance, right? So that's what an AMI is. Then you have snapshots, volumes. A snap volume is a volume of EBS volumes, right? The storage volumes that you've created and can attach to your instances. Snapshots are snapshots of the instances that you create. There are more things here like the security groups, elastic IPs, key pairs. Remember we created a key pair the last time. Today we'll show you how to create one. And then we have load balancers. You'll learn all of these as we go along, guys. All right, so we selected the Ubuntu type, right? And we're seeing this, the machine type, the description of the machine here. And it's a T2 micro. There are different types of instances that you could create. So if you click on this info here, you will see that there are different types of instances and they have different use cases and different pricing models. So it says here, prices shown are for instances running common operating systems with no pre-installed software. So that you understand the types. So you have different types depending on your workload. These, the T2 micros, are the smaller ones, and you can see RZ something something big, large, humongous machines. You can see how much they cost per month. Z1D metal, they're used for different types of workloads. So your workload will determine the type of instance that you want to launch. For this, since it's a small thing, we use the T2 micro, which is just a small machine. All right, on the key pair section, right? Remember we said the key pair is simply like a way to see for a way for AWS to figure out if this is truly the identity of the person who says he is, right? It will give you access to your instance. You can use a key pair to securely connect to your instance and ensure that you have access to the selected key pair before you launch the instance. So if you don't have the key pair, right? If you already created a key pair, you could use that key pair. I will use my key pair, but if you don't have, you just click here and give it a name. Just say Primus Learning blah 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 key pair, leave it on perm and just create, and it will automatically show here, right? So I already have that key pair. I will select this key pair right here and just use. I just showed you how to create a key pair, and we defined what a key pair is right here, right? We told you that the key pair is this identity right here. It is a private key, or this private key is stored on the local computer and a public key is stored on the instance, and both are called key pair, right? Because it's a pair, right? The pair, you store one, AWS stores one. They have to match before they can allow you to access the instance, right? So we've selected this one. I have the key pair downloaded on my system, and this is it right here. So I have it downloaded on my system. That's the one I'm storing. AWS will store the public one, as I explained earlier. All right. So let me X out of this little info panel. And then the networking sections. This is absolutely important. You cannot miss this. If you miss this, your use case will not work. Remember, we created a VPC called Primus Learning Series VPC. When we're explaining VPCs, we told you that a VPC is a private cloud, a private place, virtual cloud that you create for yourself, an internet, a connect, a networking area that you've created for yourself, and you want to create your instances inside that networking area and inside that range of that range. This is the range that we created for ourselves here. And so yes, we are selecting that VPC that we created, and then we want to select the public subnet. Remember, I said this instance will be tucked inside the public subnet. We made sure that the public subnet has internet access to the internet, right? And so we want to use it because if you don't have public internet, there's no way this will act as a web server. Your web server, your web application will not be able to run here. And so we are selecting the public subnet for this use case right here. And then you want to enable a public IP address because it needs to be publicly accessible. And then you need to create a security group. I've already created a security group, but I'll go ahead and create a security group here. You can call this security, just call this security group and just put these two in front there. And you could use this security group, for all your publicly accessible instances. Now, what is happening with this instance is that you would have to open up some rules, right? You have to open up some security rules. And remember, we define security rules as a virtual firewall, right? That defines inbound access and outbound access. So on this inbound access, you see this is inbound security group rules, right? We're saying that the type of rule we want to define is SSH and the protocol is TCP, and the port range is 22. You want to SSH into an instance, you have to open port 22. Either you're opening it to where? To your particular IP. So if I do my IP, it will pick up the IP of my instance. But if I say anywhere, then anybody in the internet who has my private key should be able to access this instance, right? Because I'm opening it up to everywhere, anybody in the internet. Then you have to add another rule. This second rule is HTTP because we will be running an application, right? Remember, we'll be opening up an application. So we want to open this up to the internet. This one is necessary to everyone in the internet, right? So the port range for HTTP is 80. So port 80 will be open. Once we do run this application, the application I told you will run inside this instance, it will run on port 80, and that's why we're opening it up. Else we'll not be able to access the application because it will be secured. So this is the second level of security that you're opening up for this instance. The first one is we put it in a public subnet, right? That's where you define one type of security. If you don't want your instance to be accessible in the internet, you close it up there. And then at this level, you are also giving a certain level of security, and also with the private key thing. So you have so much security on your EC2 instance at different levels. And this is your root volume. This is the volume that is attached to your instance. This root volume is ephemeral, which means if you don't if you don't add volumes from it, any data that you stored here, once your instance is stopped, it can disappear, right? So this volume is ephemeral. So you see, we told you could add a new volume or EBS volume. In this diagram, you see that explicitly. You see that there's Amazon EBS volumes that is outside, but you can attach it to that instance. So once you're creating the instance, you can attach the volume directly. So you can do this. You see, add volume and give it any amount of volume you want, of gigabytes of storage you want. You see, it's gigabyte of storage. You could add 8. I will just add 8 here, and see it's EBS volume and is non-encrypted. This one is non-encrypted, and you can then go ahead and and create. So let's see more details. You can choose to add an IAM role to this instance, right? Like this role, I've attached an IAM role. This IAM role will give you access to other things, right? You can decide to say, hey, I want this instance to have access to S3 and query things in S3. I want this instance to have access to some other things within my AWS account. Then I'll create a role. If you don't have the role, we learned how to create IAM roles. So you create a role, attach S3 access to that role, and then attach that role to this instance. So I created a role called EC2 instance S3 role. So if you go to IAM, you will be able to see that role. It's a simple role with simple permissions. So if I go here and go to that role, to roles, you see this is the role. It has permissions, and it has what? It has Amazon S3 full access. So this role should be able, this instance should be able to do everything within S3. Can go and figure out instances, you can go and create things in S3 and so on and so forth. So that's the role attached to this instance. You can create your own role and attach to your instance, right? And down here, the rest should be the same, guys. Leave the rest the same. You can attach the role. We will not use the role right now. So even if you leave it empty, that's not a problem. If you decide to not use any role, that's not a problem. But I will just select this role for no reason. All right. So we want to add some data here, right? And I have some data in here. We'll use that data to test it. I will explain this right here, right? So let me explain this a little bit. This is just an SH script, right? An SH, a shell script. This shell script is simply updating the instance, and it will install Apache. Apache is a web server. You can learn about web servers. And then it will get the IP address of the host machine, right, of this instance that we're creating. And then it will cut some data inside the HTML. It will cut an index.html page, or it will create an index.html page, and the index.html page will just look the way it is. And I'll write some information on it. Welcome to your Primus Learning AWS series tutorial, or AWS tutorial series. We can put tutorial series, or we could add AWS EC2 tutorial series, and say this is the best EC2, AWS EC2. So we're just adding some writings on it. This is the best AWS EC2 tutorial series on the internet, and blah, blah, blah. And then it'll ask you to vote. This is our voting app. It'll ask you some questions. It'll ask you, let's see the question it's asking you. It'll ask you, this is the best AWS EC2 tutorial series on the internet, and ask you to vote yes or no. You see, I added the vote button here, yes or no. You just click on yes. For you guys, you have to vote by leaving us a comment, right? Just leave us a comment to say that you are either for it or not for it. So leave us the comments on the comment section of this video, and let us know your thoughts. Anyway, so this is the script. We'll just copy this script. It is the user data script, and just paste it here. What will happen is, as this instance is launching, it will come in here and run all of this and create these things inside the instance. So everything else looks good. We're creating just one instance for now. So go ahead and create this instance and launch the instance. So the instance is launching. And if you click here, you'll go to the instance and see how it's launching. It will show that it is still pending, or it's initializing and all that. So you see it's still pending. Once it starts initializing, we'll copy the IP address of the instance and go to it. So it's still on the pending state. Just refresh, keep refreshing. It will take like a couple of seconds to get ready. You see it's running, and then the status check is initializing, which means if you go to the instance now, it should be installing all the stuff that we have on that user data. And then you see the IP range. I told you the IP range would fall between 10.0.1 for the public instances, right? Remember, we defined it with a 10.0.1.0 slash something. So the IP, the last number here is the range. It will fall between 1 to 256. Remember, we said it will have 256 IP addresses, right? So this number here will either be a 1 or a 2 or a 3 up to 256. So it will pick a random number in between, right? In that block of IP addresses. This is what happens with the private IPv4 addresses. So this is the public IP address. We want to copy it. I think it's still initializing, but we want to, I'm sure it should have installed things. This is the test that I did in the morning and it worked. So if it runs now, it means our VPC creation and everything was perfect. And yes, it is working. It's working, guys. And now you could see it says, welcome to your Primus Learning AWS EC2 tutorial series. And this is a beautiful design. Here is the IP address of this instance. And that is the IP address we just saw. And yay, I can vote, right? I'm voting yes. It will go to not found here because there's no backend that has been defined on it. You could vote. Your vote, guys, can count. Put them in the comment sections and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, join as a member in our channel. We'll be grateful, and let's keep this flame burning, guys. Let's keep this free education on YouTube going. I think it's really good. So help support the project, and we'll give you all the best contents that we can provide. All right, so this instance is working. We can SSH into this instance, right? You can connect into this instance. You just use this and go to where your key pair is stored, right? And clear your screen there. I used this earlier, so I'll clear my screen. And you have to be on your download. This is where my key pair is. Remember, I said you have to match it to your key pair. So my key pair is on my downloads folder. And so I need to be on that key pair, on the location where the key pair is to run this and connect. So just do this. And yes, I want to connect. I'll say yes, I want to connect. And it will connect me to the instance. So I'm currently connected to my instance. You can see my private IP address here, and I can begin to create stuff inside my instance. I can create things, files, and create anything inside my EC2 instance. And I'm able to also access my EC2 instance from the web browser, right? I'm able to access my EC2 instance from the web browser, which matches exactly what we're doing here, right? We're able to access this instance from the web browser, and we're able to, as users, SSH into this EC2 instance right here. But we will not be able to access anything from this instance, either from either from outside or from SSH, right? Will not be able. If you want to do that, you will have to do another step, which will be creating a bastion host. Creating a bastion host, that is not the essence of this tutorial today, so we'll not create a bastion host. But let's go ahead and create the instance, the second instance, right? We'll go ahead and create it, and you see that you will not be able to access it because that's you created it inside a private subnet. So if you go to EC2 again, and go to instances. Let's just delete this instance for now because we've tested and it's working. So you just go to our instance state and terminate, and then create another instance, which is the private instance. We want to launch it inside the private subnet. We'll give it the same name. We'll give it the Primus series type of name, and we'll call it Primus Learning Series Private. Instead of public, now want to put private instance. Maybe it's an instance that hosts your databases or your things or some applications that you don't want internet facing. All right, so select the instance, same thing, same configurations. We'll do the same configurations as the other one. So everything here can be the same, and we'll select the key pair that is already existing. I'll show you. We'll even launch an application here, but nothing will happen because it will be in a private subnet. It will not work. You will not be able to access it from the internet. This is the VPC, right? And then we're putting it inside the private subnet now. Remember, private subnet, very important. You're not putting it inside the public subnet. Even if you enable this, you still not be able to access it from the internet. And even if you select the same security group and give it even, you see, it's not seeing the public security group because, let's see, because it's not in that so you can even use the default, which is open to the internet and everything. And you could add some volumes as well. You could add some 8 GB volume, and everything could be the same. You could use the same role, right? You could select that IAM role here. And because we tucked it in a private subnet, nothing would work. So if you copy this user data and even put inside, you will not be able to access it from the internet. And then you launch. Once you've launched, you can go back there. It's pending. So give it a couple of seconds here to start running. Same, you see that we did the same things that we did for the public one, except that we tucked it inside a private subnet. And so if you go here and even, you see, we even gave it a public IP address. If you go there and copy it and go to the browser and X out this browser, or just put it here, all right? This is the new instance. Nothing will work on it. It will load very soon, and you'll see that it will not work. And then you see the IP address, the private IP address of this instance is a .2, right? Remember, we created it to be 10.0.2.0/24, and the rest here, remember, the IP address the IP addresses behind here will always be from 1 to 256. It can pick any random number, but this will be a 2 in front here. So if you copy this and go and run, you see it will just keep turning. It's turning, nothing is happening there. It will just time out and say, this page is not working, isn't working, because it's in a public, so it's in a private subnet. There's no internet connectivity to it. So no one, the web browser on it is not working, right? The application on it is not able to connect because there's no internet gateway that has been attached to the route table of this subnet. So that's just to show you the importance of the subnets, right? All right, we can go ahead and delete this instance. So you can't even SSH into this instance. So if we do on the connect, you see we did everything the same, and you do on connect and go here and exit and connect. You see it just keeps turning and turning, a timeout. Just times out. But we used everything same. All right, you see, connection timed out. All right, so this is how this first part of the tutorial looks. So let's just go ahead and delete this instance. We'll also go ahead and delete the VPC. To delete the VPC that you created, you need to follow the same steps, but in the reverse order. Else you will not be able to delete it, right? Remember, we created the VPC from the VPC backward. So you have to delete it in the reverse order, right? To be able to create new resources. So let's go ahead and quickly delete, because that may take some time for you. So remember the resources we created. We created an internet gateway. We created a NAT gateway. So we'll just go ahead and delete that NAT gateway. Delete. All right, so it's deleting. It'll take a while to delete. So you see it's showing deleting. And then after deleting, we'll go to the route tables. We'll go to the route tables and unassociate, do the unassociation. Remember, we associated the route table, so we want to unassociate. We don't want any linked services. If you have linked services, it will fail to work. It will not be able to delete. So unassociate this. You see this, the status says black hole, black hole because the NAT gateway is being deleted. All right, so unassociate that and go to the private subnet. So let's go to the private subnet and unassociate it. This is a private. Let's go to the public one and unassociate. It's a public one. Let's unassociate and remove that. Now let's go ahead and try to detach. So these route tables are attached to these subnets. So we've done that, and let's try if we can delete these ones. I think delete. Let's see if it's still associated. Delete. Yep, it's deleted. All right, let's delete this private one. Let's delete route table and delete. Now it's deleted. Okay, so these are deleted. The gateway is deleted. Let's delete the subnet. Let's go to the subnet, the private 2.1, and this subnet is still attached. Let's see if we can delete. Delete. All right, let's delete the other one. So this one, I have to delete this one. Delete. And now let's go to the VPC and see if we can delete. The VPC is this one. Let's do delete and type delete and delete. So the VPC has been deleted. Now you can go to the gateway, to the internet gateway, which was attached to that VPC, and delete it. All right, does not exist, so it's already deleted. The internet gateway has been cleaned up, I think. You see, there's no internet gateway attached again. All right, so we've cleaned up our VPC. Now we want to do the same thing, right? We did, remember I said to delete this, you have to go the reverse order. So you have to start with the, we started with a NAT gateway, and then we deleted the route table association, then we deleted the route tables, then we deleted the subnets before deleting the VPC. That's how you delete it, because all of them are interconnected. So you will not be able to delete them if you don't do them that way. All right, now let's go to the other method of creating this, right? Let's go to the other method of creating this. I want to use Terraform. And for those who are new to Terraform, if you have not watched our first part of the video, you have to go back and watch the first part of the video to be able to do this, learn how to install Terraform, learn how to install the AWS CLI, because you need to configure access to your AWS account from the CLI before you can run this, right? So you have to install the CLI, create a user, and do AWS configure on your terminal, and configure that user. So you put the access key and the secret access key, so that you are able to connect to your AWS account from your terminal. Then you should be able to do your Terraform installation and run Terraform commands. All right. So first part, it's basic. So I've created a folder called EC2, right? I'll push this out to our repository, which is called the Primus Learning AWS tutorial series. I'll add it to the description section of this video, guys. So don't ask me where this code is found, because it will be in the description section. So many people reach out and they're asking where it is. It's on the description section of the videos. You have to expand the description section of the videos to be able to see it. All right. So We have two files that we've created inside a folder called EC2, right? We created a folder called EC2, and we have a main file. This is the Terraform file in here, and then that user data, which I explained earlier already. So the main file is just the Terraform file, and it has a provider. So download the provider, and the first block here is just creating the VPC, which we call the Primus Learning Series VPC. We can put a 2 here, right? We can put a 2. Remember the other one we're creating with a 2. So we'll put a 2 and then the block 10.0.0.0/16, just as we created in the code in the terminal, right? So which is this first part here. This is the VPC we are creating inside our AWS account, this VPC. Then the second part is the internet gateway. Remember, the second thing we did was create the internet gateway, and we named it Internet Gateway 2, Primus Learning Internet Gateway. We'll just put a 2 there. And again, we want to come down here and create the first subnet, which is the public subnet, and we're giving it the range 10.0.1.0/24, and we'll give it a 2 here. It is our public subnet. And we'll come down again and create a second private subnet, and we'll give it a 10.0.2.0/24, which will give us 256 IP addresses, and we'll give it the name and end with a 2, just as we did above from the terminal. Now, remember we created route tables, right, and associated the route tables to the VPC. We attached it. Remember, that's what we did. So here we'll create a resource called the AWS route table, and the name will be this route table 2. So we're editing this file a little bit, and the route table, the route would be this, right? The CIDR block range will be this, and it will be attached. This is the internet gateway, right? We want the internet gateway to be attached to it. So we are not doing this separately as we did it from the console, but we want it to have the destination, the internet, and to have internet gateway attached to that route table, so that we don't do this in different sections in the code. And then the route table for the private one is the same thing. We'll create this one, and the name should be have a 2, and then the NAT gateway, I did not add the NAT gateway for this one, so you could add a NAT gateway if you want, and then associate public route table with the public subnet, which is what we're doing here, right? So this is the association of the public subnet and the route table, and this is the association of the private route table with the private route table with the subnet. So remember the association, went to the association table, and we edited and did that association. This is where we do it. And then for the security group, remember we said the security groups are simply virtual firewalls that you open ingress and egress. Ingress is traffic that is coming inside. Remember port 22 that we opened, and then we opened that to everyone in the internet. And then port 80, we also opened that to the internet for everyone. And this is how it's defined. And then the IAM role, we created initially I attached an IAM role to it, but I removed that. So this one is simply the EC2 instance that is created in the public subnet. This is the one which has the user data, right? You see this one has the user data, which means we'll be installing that website on this one. And this is the AMI. Everything is looking good. We'll give it the name, leave the names as they are. And we'll name it Primus Learning Public Instance 2, just like that. So this is the public instance. The private instance, we'll give it a name, private instance 2, and save it. And so this one, we have not added the user data. We no need to install data in it when it's not accessible from the internet, and we are good to go. And then here we are creating an EBS volume and attaching it. The EBS volume, we'll just give it a 2 and just save. We'll create the EBS volume here. That's the EBS volume for the public instance and the EBS volume for the private instance. No, sorry. We create the EBS volume for the private instance. This is it up here. And then here is the attachment. We're attaching it. So we've created it up here and we are attaching it to that instance. And yeah, that's it. That's it. We can go ahead and run this. So to run this, it's simple. You open a terminal. I'm making this quite big so that you can see. So you open up your terminal and drag this a little bit. You have to be inside the EC2 folder. This is how it works. You have to necessarily be inside the EC2 folder. I will show you how you can make and run everything from outside. But for this tutorial, you have to be inside the EC2 folder to run your Terraform. If not, it will not work, guys. All right, so what you want to do now is run Terraform init, Terraform init, to initialize the backend. So you want to initialize, you see some files that will come here because you are initializing and installing things, right? You've seen a Terraform file that has come here, and you initialize and download things and all that information. All right, now it's initialized and everything is looking good. It's locked this, so no one else from anywhere can run this except you. Is explicitly you explicitly decide to open it up using the code, the ID that they provide here. So do Terraform plan just to see how many resources will be created as this is running, right? When you do Terraform plan, it will go into your AWS environment and figure out this file and say, hey, how many resources is this going to create? This plan tells us that 13 resources will be created because we've defined 13 resources in this configuration file up here. And these are the resources. You can just see them and see if they really truly are accurate and fit what you are expecting. So we'll go ahead and do Terraform apply. Since I don't want to do, I'll just say auto approve like this. I don't want to be approving things after it runs. And simply hit on create, and we'll create all the resources. All what we were doing from the terminal, it will create them right here. You see, so it says planning to add 13 resources. So this will go ahead and add 13 resources for us. The first thing it's creating is the VPC because it needs to tag in those other things, those other resources like the subnet inside this VPC, right? That was the first thing that I showed you, right? So Terraform has noticed that it needs to create other resources inside. So it's figured out the order it will create these resources. You don't define the order in Terraform except you explicitly define it and say this resource depends on this other resource. It will not it will figure out the order for you and do its creation. So it's gone ahead and it's creating things. You can see it's creating the private instance, AWS instance where private, still creating. So it will take some time to create all the resources and do all the associations, do everything for you. And this should take not up to 2 minutes, right? And you're done creating your resources. And you could apply this in many accounts, create this in many accounts, and not have to manually go in and create in one account, then go to the next account and create. With your script, you are ready to go create the same resources in account A to account 200 if you have 200 accounts, right? So this is the recommended method. So if we go back to our EC2 dashboard, search for EC2, you should already see resources that are beginning to appear. You see 2 instances are running. 2 instances are running, and these are the instances that we just created. They are initializing. We have the private one and the public one. So if you go to the public one, you should be able to see an IP address and copy that IP address. You see, this is the 10.0.1, which falls within that range. And this number falls within the range that we defined. All right, let's just go here and put that IP address. It should bring us to our website. All right, here you are. Welcome to your Primus Learning AWS EC2 tutorial series. Here is the IP address of the instance, of this instance, and this is the same IP address, and you can vote. And please go ahead and vote on the comment section for us, and let's do this together. All right, so your instance is running. Everything is working as expected. 13 resources were created. And if you go to the second instance, you discover that you will not be able to access a website on the second instance, which is this one, which is because, oops, no, that's the public one. Sorry. Let's pick the private one. This is the this is a private one. All right, so you see it doesn't even have a public IP. We didn't even grant it a public IP, and it falls within the two range as we defined in our code. So guys, this is how this will be created. It's looking as good as we were expecting. You can SSH into this one. All right, you can SSH into this one, into the public one. Whereas the public one, that's private one, the public one, you can SSH into this one. So if you go to connect and go down to SSH client, you should be able to use this and connect to that instance that we just created. Just make sure we copy that, copy, and come here. This, yes, connect. All right, we are connected to the instance and you can do your work in here normally. All right, let me clear my screen. And yeah, that's it. That's it, guys. So we're able to create this from the terminal or from Terraform and also from the AWS console. We can go ahead now and delete all of these resources by just running this. So to delete all of these resources, you can just run the Terraform Terraform destroy. This would destroy all the resources so that it doesn't waste cost for you. So go ahead and run Terraform destroy and say --auto approve, and it would destroy all the resources for us. All right, so let's see if it goes ahead and destroys. Yes, it's destroying. It will destroy 13 resources just as it created 13 resources. Okay, so it's on the way, destroying. It should be done destroying in a couple of, in about a minute or so. So the destroy is almost the same like the apply, right? The time it takes to destroy is almost the same time for the apply. And I'll push this code out, the changes to the repository, and it will be attached to the description section of the video. When I talk about the description section of the video, some people do not understand where the description section of the video is. So I'll give the description section of, if you go to YouTube and go to any video, all right? So let's say you go to YouTube and go to one of our videos, right? If you want to see the description section, this is the description section here. So this is making noise. This is the description section. You just expand it, right? This is the description section here, and this is the code that I've provided. Link, you just click on this link and you go to our repository and you'll be able to get everything, right? So that's the description section I'm referring to for those who have not understood what I mean by the description section. All right, this is still destroying, should be complete in a couple, and that's it, it's completed. All right, guys, thanks for watching. It was a pleasure presenting this to you. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the join button if you can join to become a member of our channel. It's a pleasure signing off here. My name is Primus Veku and this is Primus Learning.